Cardwell, gateway to Hinchinbrook Island and the World Heritage wet tropical rainforest, has had its fair share of issues ranging from environmental to the management of land in Australia's coastal zones. Just 2 kilometres south of the coastal community of Cardwell, we find the once magnificent Port Hinchinbrook development. This private investment, which has since fallen into disrepair after being built more than 15 years ago. The reality is a grim situation that speaks of a development that's been falling apart since many years before Cyclone Yasi.
For the first few years the place was beautiful, lush, green, pruning, everything. It was beautiful, but it slowly started to deteriorate.
There's probably in the vicinity of 220, 240 individual properties. And right at this time, a high percentage of them are on the market for sale. Various reasons. You can look at people's individual financial circumstances given the global financial crisis and the negative impact that's had on everybody economically, but there are also issues with the Port Hinchinbrook development that started before the global financial crisis that were totally relevant to the development company and their relationship with the property owners. Then along came the global financial crisis. Then along comes Cyclone Yasi, which was the straw that broke the camel's back. So if you throw all of that into the pot, it really meant that it's very understandable why there are so many properties for sale, because of the uncertainty of the future of the development.
Join with me now as we look at the real Port Hinchinbrook. From empty blocks to countless houses for sale, to fallen trees and overgrown medium strips, to weed-spoiled bitumen, exposed electrical wires, and irrigation hoses, bitumen that now resembles an unsealed or forestry road, and streets that have been closed to the public in order to keep prying eyes out. This is the reality of what residents who are brought into the development that's not maintained by the council, but by the owner of the development, the Williams Corporation. However, the Williams Corporation has long struggled to maintain the development, and as of August 2013, has entered into receivership, which has meant all work and any possibility of maintenance being carried out by themselves or their service provider has now passed. An agreement signed between the Williams Corporation and the government in the late 1990s binded the resort's owner to the continued maintenance of the sewerage system, roads, marina, and other infrastructure at the resort. Long-term resident of Port Hinchinbrook, Vicky Barry, knows all too well the struggles her and her husband have faced since building their house in the development just over 10 years ago.
For the first few years the place was beautiful, lush, green, pruning, everything. It was beautiful. But it slowly started to deteriorate, and we could see that what we were paying wasn't being spent where it should have been being spent. The levy was purely for maintenance, but we sort of could see we're paying this amount of money, but surely it's not costing that much to do that amount of maintenance. I need to explain there's 2 separate companies involved here. There's Williams Corp, which was the development company, which was Keith Williams. And then there was what they call PHS, which is a maintenance company, but it was controlled by Williams Corp. So the residents had no say over what maintenance was done or how it was done. We pay a levy of approximately $3,000 a year, approximately, depending on where your block was in the development, towards that maintenance. And we could see that what we were paying wasn't being spent where it should have been being spent. The levy was purely for maintenance, but we sort of could see we're paying this amount of money, but surely it's not costing that much to do that amount of maintenance.
In the past, there have been buyers interested in purchasing the resort and taking on the development. Most recently, Townsville businessman Tony Dotter has expressed interest in purchasing the site, but was turned off from buying the resort after learning of the high maintenance costs. Although he described purchasing the site as financial suicide, residents will remember Dosher for the removal of villas from the port's resort that was just on the other side of this fence. What lays behind this fence is a reminder of Dosher and also poses an environmental hazard should another cyclone occur. What's that big fenced off area in there?
Front Street! Yeah. That was owned, is owned, I don't know who owns it now, probably the mortgagees. That was what was technically termed Front Street. Now that had a restaurant, it had office space, it was supposed to have some retail shops, and there were some cabins along there, accommodation cabins. I think there was 12. After Yasi and the marina was gone, there was a lot of damage through there. The restaurant was boarded up, so they started letting the cabins out, but in a hurry to get money, the cabins on Front Street got sold off to a Mr. AA Transportables, I think it was, Tony Dodder. And he was going to come in and be our saviour and buy the resort and all the rest of it. So he came in when it all started to go pear-shaped because he decided it was too hard. Got low loaders in, cut down all the palm trees that had been put in, 10 years prior, cut pipes, loaded the cabins onto low loaders and trucked them out. I complained to the administrators at that point for Williams Corp about the condition, and we took photos and we had a story, and I actually emailed photos to the administrators complaining about the way it had been left because they just cut pipes off, so we had open-ended pipes into the sewerage. It was dangerous. There was parts of walkways and stuff that they just trashed and thrown. There was TVs, just whatever they didn't want, just trash it, leave it, who cares? Not our problem. So I complained. So suddenly they put up those fences that are in place now to stop the likes of me getting in there to complain about the condition that the place had been left in. Because the way I figure it, I'm sure it wasn't in the agreement that he could just trash the place to take the cabins out. Surely there was a huge pile of greenery where they at least put all the greenery into one pile. They cut down established trees just so that they could get their cabins out cheaply and easily and in a hurry.
As the development is still private land, the council and state government have no direct responsibility to maintain the infrastructure, despite parts of the development being available for public use, such as the existing boat ramp that also provides direct access to the Hinchinbrook Channel. It's here at the lookout over the beautiful Hinchinbrook Channel we see the natural splendor that draws crowds in to experience this beautiful coastline. Those crowds that often come from neighbouring regional centres such as Townsville and Cairns of a weekend often pack the boat ramp out and are believed to be the main cause for the resort's deteriorating roads. Residents of the resort have a responsibility to pay both the resort's body corporate fees and council rates. Retirees Jennifer and Ian McKellen both chose Port Hinchinbrook as a place they would like to retire at, but have since been experiencing the same difficulties that all residents of the development have been facing, due to deteriorating infrastructure and overuse of the public boat jetty.
The problem is that they use it free of charge, and we have to pay a very considerable cost to maintain certainly the access road to it. So to us it would only be fair if they paid a small fee each time they use the boat ramp.
Do you think since the boat ramp is a public ramp, the council should pay for that road to the boat ramp to be maintained?
Yes, of course.
Yes, it should be. I mean, there'd be, comparatively, it's all public transport really that's going along it rather than the private. Yeah. Because we would go along we would have gone along Front Street, which of course it's blocked off now.
Yeah.
We wouldn't use that.
But we also pay council rates on top.
Yep.
So we've got a double rating system. So the council doesn't have to spend a penny in here, but they still charge very, very high rates, particularly since amalgamation.
The Cassowary Coast Regional Council is responsible for maintaining the local infrastructure for the Cassowary Coast, which Port Hinchinbrook is a part of. We met with Cardwell Councillor Glenn Lee, who explained exactly how the rate money from the residents of Port Hinchinbrook is spent.
Well, Well, as soon as they drive out of Port Hinchinbrook, they're using the library, they're using local roads, they're using the beautiful foreshore of Oyster Point. They're using the same services that the community use, and to maintain those services, rates have to support them. They all get their waste removed, just like all the other ratepayers. They pay their waste levy. Now, the rates themselves, if you isolate them from the fees for services and charges, that's basically a land tax. So with Port Hinchinbrook, it's a resort, it's still under a deed, so that deed needs to be sorted out before anything can be done with roads. For example, the roads are private property. They're under a deed, but the council has an easement over the road. So the road can be basically sold as property and the road can be gone. The council can't do anything about that. As far as the rates, everybody pays rates. I just live over here in the middle of town, I pay rates just like people in Port Hinchinbrook. I had to put up with all the reconstruction, all the damage for 2 years. Yes, it's now fixed. Unfortunately, Port Hinchinbrook is just about there with their arrangements with Port Hinchinbrook Services to get their problems fixed. Because as soon as those arrangements in place, I'm sure the state government can then step in and offer them assistance. I'm talking, get the marina sorted out, get their roads sorted out, get it back to a real livable situation. And they might have to pay a little bit for it, but they'll get it done and it'll be all theirs at the end. And they're the ones that can then basically manage their own destiny, because before it wasn't.
Prior to the development being proposed, the Joby Occupitas government had commissioned a feasibility study to determine the best placement for a port along the northern coast between the Hinchinbrook Channel and Clump Point at Mission Beach. In the report, it outlined specifically the site Oyster Point, which is the site Port Hinchinbrook has been developed on. In the report, it said it should not be used due to high sedimentation and ongoing dredging costs. Spokesperson Margaret Morehouse from the Alliance to Save Hinchinbrook said it was clear the site should never have been developed as a port.
But then there are the multitude of little ones, and they're just as important. I don't know whether they just didn't understand the technical aspects of that 1977 Harbours and Marine report, but it clearly said the site suffers from severe siltation, and that should be the biggest warning you could ever want against building a marina.
All marinas suffer from siltation and sediment buildup.
To some extent.
Severe is on another
Severe.
level.
Severe is a different category altogether. It just says you're silly if you do it. And the government wasn't about to do that. The government was used to put in marinas, but they put them in places where it wasn't going to cost them a pile to maintain them, where there was already some deep enough water and deep enough access so that you didn't have repetitive, prohibitively expensive dredging. Even in the days when nobody worried too much about where the dredge spoil went, the government was still looking at better places. So they looked at the places and they said, well, this isn't one of them. Sadly, this was all foreseeable, and we did, and we tried very hard to alert people to the facts, but thousands and thousands of people must have visited that site with a view to buying. Very few did. Most of the people who did buy, and many who got out by selling again quickly, were speculators who saw it as a rising, again it's the capital gains thing, get in quick, get out quick, Some people really did fall for the dream, bought properties there and bought berths there, thinking that this was going to be a wonderful new lifestyle. As one of them said to me, it wasn't always easy to find the facts. And that's something which troubles all real estate sales everywhere in Australia, I guess. the due diligence that one should do when buying, I suspect, doesn't really cover all of the things you need to know in every circumstance. And the trouble is, when people fall for the dream, they tend to trust what they don't know.
Our neighbours had their property on the market at not an unrealistic price for probably 4 years now. They did have it, it was a bit high before Yasi, but since Yasi, no one comes down there to look unless you're willing to give your property away for less than what. And I mean, we've got a mortgage, but it might come to that we have to actually give it away because no one wants to buy in there. Properties in Cardwell are moving, albeit slowly, but anything in Port Hinchinbrook, forget it.
It is a great location because it's one of the very few places, you know, in Australia that you've got such a
Nice
sailing available to you in the various directions with all the islands and stuff. It's not exposed, you can get into a sheltered spot. Whereas a lot of the east coast, and certainly actually over on the other side, the west coast, it can be very exposed.
The viability of the marina will have long-term positive impact on the viability of communities like Cardwell. It will reinstate the marine facilities that are desperately needed by not only the recreation boating person but by the professionals and also by the various government departments that need that all-weather rule-tight access to the water. So I mean, it's a no-brainer. They spend X amount of dollars here, they get a long-term return, and you get viability in communities. And from Cardwell's point of view, we are going to have great difficulty in recovering economically from Yasi without that marina and the marine infrastructure and the jobs that come with it.